Next on the 5 o'clock report.
When I look at the people who are out there doing the violence, that's not the people that we see during the day.
We have to be prepared to do what is necessary.
We have enormous leverage at this point.
There is another war crime about to happen.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
Watching the skies and the water. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Webster. We begin with a dual weather threat. First, a severe thunderstorm watch in place for several counties in western and northern Pennsylvania, along with New York's western southern tier. There was already one tornado-warned storm in Mercer County, PA, last hour. And there's also a flood watch for much of western and central New York, as well as counties along the northern tier of PA.
Some active weather as we head through the afternoon and evening hours, with some showers and thunderstorms making their way across the region from west to east. Some of these showers will have the potential to produce some very heavy downpours along with some strong gusty winds, so be prepared for the possibility of some rough weather.
That's meteorologist Ken McKinley tracking it all, his updated forecast for your area coming up during this newscast. Now to our other top story, evil unleashed in the City of Angels. Protesters already gathering again, likely meaning another night ahead of violent protest in Los Angeles, directed at federal enforcement against illegal immigration there. That's what it sounded like last night as hundreds of protesters clashed with local police and National Guard troops ordered there by President Trump.
There was a lot of violence there. There was a lot of violence that it could have gotten much worse. And you have an incompetent governor. We're not going to let this happen to our country.
This L.A. resident sympathizes with the protesters.
People are taken from their houses, from their workplaces, for no reason.
L.A. Police Chief Jim McDonnell.
When I look at the people who are out there doing the violence, that's not the people that we see during the day who are legitimately out there exercising their First Amendment rights to be able to express their feelings about the immigration enforcement issue. These are people who are all hooded up. They've got a hoodie on. They've got face masks on.
President Trump says if things don't simmer down, he might dispatch U.S. Marines to L.A. House Speaker Mike Johnson.
We have to be prepared to do what is necessary, and I think the notice that might happen might have the deterrent effect.
California Governor Gavin Newsom says he's suing Trump over that National Guard deployment to L.A. In a move related to illegal immigration, President Trump's travel ban took effect today.
This new travel ban will essentially ban travel to 12 countries and partially restricting travels to about 7 others. The idea behind this, according to White House officials, is to tighten immigration controls because they say this is a national security concern.
CBS historian Small oversees a new round of trade talks between U.S. and Chinese negotiators underway in London. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
The United States and China have strategic interests in one another's markets, and the president is always going to put American workers and industries first. And the talks in Geneva really set the table for that, but we need China to comply with their side of the deal.
China expert Gordon Chang tells Fox News the U.S. is playing a strong hand.
We have enormous leverage at this point, and I hope that our trade negotiators in London right now are pressing that to the max, because we have fewer vulnerabilities than the Chinese think.
Rare earth minerals necessary for a lot of high-tech devices are a top item on the agenda there. Israel stops an aid ship bound for Gaza carrying Swedish activist Greta Thunberg and others in what's called the Freedom Flotilla Coalition. Those aboard weren't happy about being stopped.
We are under attack. Please sound the alarm. They're throwing a lot of substances and objects on us.
There is another war crime about to happen.
Israeli officials say those aboard were brought safely to Israel and shown a documentary about the deadly October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. In Ukraine last night, another deadly attack, a big assault by Russian missiles and drones.
Ukraine says Russia launched nearly 500 drones overnight, but the Air Force destroyed more than 2/3 of them mid-flight. That was the largest overnight drone bombardment since the start of the war 3 years ago.
CBS's Elaine Cobb. Back to Washington, President Trump's so-called One Big Beautiful Bill being dissected by Republicans and Democrats alike. Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar is hopeful her side can block the budget bill with a little GOP help.
All we need is 4 Republicans to stand up against what Josh Hawley calls immoral Medicaid cuts. Just 4 of them.
Budget cuts are getting close scrutiny. Christian Brangle is with the National Parks Conservation Association and tells CBS staff cuts are impacting how the parks are operating.
What I heard from the Yosemite people is that they ended up putting together a schedule and telling every sector of the park that everyone had to take time to clean a bathroom. Like, scientists have been going and cleaning the bathroom.
She says some staff members are saying they might leave by midsummer. Well, Pentecost Sunday saw thousands of people baptized across the U.S. in what's being called the largest such simultaneous event in history. These newly baptized Christians telling CBN.
It just felt like God was there and just amazing.
I really think that the coolest part about being out there is just experiencing people experiencing Jesus.
God was pulling on my heartstrings to, come out here and finally accept Jesus as my Savior. And today was the perfect opportunity.
California Pastor Mark Francie was one of the organizers.
The prayer of Jesus in John was that we would become one. And I think that that's what we're seeing right now is a unity around what we all agree on, which is water baptism.
The event grew out of Baptize California, which began 2 years ago with 4,000 baptisms. Still to come on the 5 o'clock report, New York lawmakers considering approving physician-assisted suicide, the future of area shopping malls, and a recap of some of the top issues in education.
This is meteorologist Ken McKinley with our Family Life forecast. Showers and thunderstorms making their way from west to east across the region as we head through this evening. Some of them producing some fairly heavy downpours along with some gusty winds. Eventually, though, tomorrow the sun will come out for all locations and temperatures will make it into the 70s. A fairly pleasant day. Humidity levels dropping off a bit. Cooler tomorrow night with low temperatures in the 50s and a good deal of sunshine on Wednesday with highs pretty well up in the 70s, 80 in some spots. A few clouds beginning to move into northern portions of central and western New York later in the day on Wednesday.
Thank you, Ken. Checking the stories now making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. The New York State Senate expected to vote this afternoon or evening on whether to make New York the 11th state to legalize physician-assisted suicide. Jason McGuire with New York Families has been a leading voice in Albany against the legislation.
It will be a historic vote. It has never been voted on the floor of the chamber, and this, frankly, is concerning because it legitimizes state-sanctioned suicide even having the vote. It's problematic.
Governor Kathy Hochul hasn't tipped her hand clearly on whether or not she'd sign the bill into law if it makes it to her desk. A church on Buffalo's east side providing more than just a church home for many. Mount Olive Baptist Church has opened a new 65-unit affordable senior housing facility adjacent to the church. Pastor Dwayne Gillison tells the Buffalo News.
Housing being so limited in our community, being able to provide affordable and safe housing is really part of the vision that God has given to us. And as the church, we look at the community as part of our responsibility.
That $27 million project was 5 years in the making. The decline in shopping malls is leaving communities across both New York and Pennsylvania in a lurch to make up for lost tax revenue.
People are still buying clothing. They're still shopping. It's just that it looks different now, how people shop.
Charles Lindsay is a retail management expert at the University of Buffalo.
The problem, though, is the debt. That's the elephant in the room. And now we've got a lot of malls that owe as much as the mall is worth.
Mall management groups have been forced to get creative in converting unused space to try to keep them from going under for good.
A lot of these malls are in such poor financial health. It takes money to make money. Very often, a mall is the largest taxpayer in a community.
There have been no new indoor shopping malls built in the U.S. since 2006. 15% of all existing malls are expected to close within the next decade. All right, up next, highlights from today's edition of Issues in Education, as our Bob Price speaks with Dr. Ralph Kerr with the Teaching and Learning Institute in Houghton, New York.
We'll begin in Harrisburg, a healthy debate there over cyber charter schools. These are public schools that are privately run, and the kids don't even have to be at school because it's all home-based education online. Democrats, Ralph, in Pennsylvania want to cut funding to cyber charters, saying there's not enough accountability, not enough transparency. What say you, Dr. Kerr, about the cyber charter debate in Pennsylvania?
Well, this is an interesting experiment that they started about 5 years ago in Pennsylvania. Parents decided some to send their children, send is in quotes there, to the cyber charter school. And it ended up costing districts anywhere from $8,000 to $29,000, which the local district then had to pay to the charter school. And so you've got a situation sort of like the COVID situation where students are at home, working along as they can. And that's challenging to begin with because it all depends on student motivation, parent involvement in terms of supervision and everything. So now the legislature, it was a 5-year experiment and the 5th year is up. So they're looking at reconstructing that, particularly in terms of the funding. And they're saying, let's go with the $8,000. We'll have every district just pay $8,000. Well, as you can imagine, the charter schools are not happy with that. If they were getting $29,000 and now they're getting $8,000, that's really a problem.
Yeah.
But it amounts to a projected $616 million saving for the state. So you can see why the legislatures would want to make that change.
Yeah, and this affects some 65,000 students now throughout Pennsylvania, so it's no small matter. We'll see what happens there in Pennsylvania. Moving across the border into New York, Ralph, the revote on those failed school budgets will happen soon. I believe it's Tuesday, June 17th. What happens if those spending plans are not approved for a second time? I think there's something like 24 districts here that are in that boat.
First of all, the districts that had their budgets go down, most of them were ones that needed to get a super majority of 60%. Mm-hmm. They can either put out the same budget, a reduced budget, or just go to a contingency right away. Most of the districts have decided to reduce their budget a little bit and go back again. If the vote is not successful this time, then they do have to go to a contingent budget, which means they can't include any money for equipment. They can't do anything in terms of unusual building maintenance. And, of course, then they always throw in also that people can't use the buildings or the grounds if there's any cost to the district, which obviously hurts the local taxpayer.
Yeah.
There are lots of things that get cut out if they go to a contingent budget.
Yeah.
But I did read that your home district there of Corning, the Corning Corporation apparently came through and gave the district $1.8 million to help them out. And so they're going to be going out with a revote that will put them under the cap and only require a majority.
Sure.
Not many cities or towns have that corporate sponsorship.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. You can hear Issues in Education and all of Family Life's full-length original features at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and at FamilyLife.org. This is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
Do you need a raise? Hi, I'm Rob West with another Faith and Finance Minute. It seems an obvious question, but is it? When money's tight and expenses skyrocket, it's easy to think more money will solve your problems. That's why I was struck by a recent survey that said more than a third of Americans earning $250,000 a year say they spend nearly all of it on household expenses. In other words, they're living paycheck to paycheck, even though they make $5,000 a week. So if you made that much, would it really be enough? Not if you spend everything you earn. Without margin, no amount will satisfy. But God promises to meet our needs, and He does. The answer isn't always more money. It's learning to live wisely with what we have and seeing God as our true provider. We can help you learn to manage your money according to biblical principles when you download the free FaithFi app. You'll find it on our website at faithfi.com.
Still to come here on the 5 o'clock report, even if you don't love golf, you will love Pennsylvanian Matt Vogt's story. That's coming up right after weather with Ken McKinley.
This is meteorologist Ken McKinley with our Family Life forecast. Showers and thunderstorms making their way from west to east across the region as we head through this evening. Some of them producing some fairly heavy downpours along with some gusty winds. The activity will end in western areas later at night, but some rain may persist in eastern areas right through daybreak tomorrow. Eventually, though, tomorrow the sun will come out for all locations and temperatures will make it into the 70s. A fairly pleasant day. Humidity levels dropping off a bit. Cooler tomorrow night with low temperatures in the 50s and a good deal of sunshine on Wednesday with highs pretty well up in the 70s, maybe 80 in some spots. There will be a few clouds beginning to move into northern portions of central and western New York later in the day on Wednesday.
All right. Thank you very much, Ken. And again, there are both a flood watch in effect for portions of western and central New York and also a severe thunderstorm watch for western Pennsylvania and some parts of western New York as well. All right, finally at 5, the sports world's eyes will be on western Pennsylvania later this week as the famed Oakmont Country Club near Pittsburgh hosts the 125th edition of the U.S. Open. And a major story at one of golf's majors will be a hometown favorite. Matt Vogt, whose day job is as a dentist, is also a top-notch amateur golfer, and he won his way into the U.S. Open field, earning a chance to return to Oakmont. That's where he spent his teens working as a caddy. He tells the Golf Channel,
I knew I could do it, and Oakmont in Pittsburgh and everything there. It means so much to me, like having grown up in Pittsburgh and caddying there, and it took every ounce of energy in my body to not think about that all day. I feel like I'm going to wake up from a dream in a little while, and this isn't going to be real, but it's real, and I'm so excited.
Now, the odds against Vogt, who's number 1,173 in the World Amateur Golf Rankings, winning at Oakmont, maybe not so good, but he says that's okay.
I'm playing with the best players in the world, so I will soak up every single second of that week and stay insanely present. I mean, it's just a dream come true.
As if all that wasn't emotional enough, Vogt won his qualifier while dealing with the grief of his father passing away just 2 months earlier. Vogt played his first practice round at Oakmont this morning. The U.S. Open begins on Thursday. And that's the world we live in for Monday, June 9th, 2025. Thank you again for listening. I'm Mark Webster, Family Life News.